Okay, so we're going to be doing chapter 9 of my book, Overcoming Digital SAT Math. And we're going to do the linear equations chapter. Remember, if you have this book, try and do the problems on your own first for the best results and corrections on your own, and then come back to this video for any explanations on extra stuff you need. If you need like a little lesson beforehand with some example problems, I'm going to link an ACT video in the description of this on YouTube so that you can go watch that one first and then attempt these problems. So let's start with number 1 right here. So it says the graph of which of the following equations has a line with a slope of 2. So remember, we have to remember anytime we have like a line, linear function, anything like that, using those words, linear equation, we have to think y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So if we want a slope of 2, that means we want the number in front of x to be 2 when y is isolated like this. So the only option that does that would be D right here. So now we have a table and we want to know, basically we want to match the table to the correct equation. So one way that you can do this is, there's a couple ways that you can do this. You can start like plugging in x values to see if they match and get you the corresponding y value. Like you could plug in 0 for x and then see do you get 0 for y, but then you have to make sure that you do it for all of the problems because sometimes it'll work for 2 of them. Like for example, if I plug in 0 for A, I'm going to get 0 for y. If I plug in 0 for answer choice B, I get 0 for y. They can't both be right. So you have to make sure that you like usually plug in several points. The easier way to do this is to just kind of use, or not easier, but like more efficient way, I guess, is to just use what we're used to, y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So easily we can see right away, y-intercept is just 0. And then our, so then it has to definitely be either a or b, and then we can determine what our slope is just using slope formula, or you could just see what is the, remember slope is going to be the change in y over the change in x. So if I'm going from 6 to 4, that's my change in y, and that's going to be down 2. And then when I go from -3 to -2, that's my change in x, and that's going up by 1. So -2 over +1, so the slope should be -2. So it has to be answer choice A. Thank you guys for the likes. And then let's go to number 3. So for number 3, we have this equation right here, and then we want to know which of these equations is the line that is perpendicular to the equation above. So remember, perpendicular means that the slope for this line, the perpendicular line, has to be the negative reciprocal of whatever the slope is for this line. Now you'll notice this is not in our typical y equals mx plus b format, so we have to change it so that we get y completely by itself, just like in the formula, so that we can easily see what the slope is. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to subtract 10x from each side, and that's going to give me -5y is equal to 5 minus 10x. And then what we're going to do is, again, we need y completely by itself, so I have to divide -5 to get rid of it on this side. And then that means I have to divide the other side also by -5. So 5 divided by -5 is -1. And then -10x divided by -5 is going to be positive 2x. So now you'll see this is the format of y equals mx plus b. It just so happens that, sorry, I'm trying to make this x look a little better, and I just made it worse. And it looks like this formula right here, where 2 is going to be our slope because it's the number being multiplied by x. So our slope of this line is 2, so that means that the slope of the perpendicular line has to be the negative reciprocal. So if 2, or 2 over 1, is this slope, the negative reciprocal would be -1/2. So we need to make sure that whatever we pick has a slope of -1/2. Again, you want to make sure that y is by itself so that you don't get tricked into like seeing what the slope is. You can kind of do that in your head real easily, but just to like show it for people on here, I'm going to do it all out. So we're trying to get y by itself for a, so that means that we have to add 2x to each side. So then that would be y is equal to 3 plus 2x. That does not have a, remember we're looking for -1/2 to be in front of the x, so it can't be that one. And then for the next one, we're going to add 3 to each side. So it's going to be -x plus 3. And then we're going to divide by 2. So when we divide by 2, we're going to get -1/2 x plus 3/2. And look, now you have -1/2 in front of your x, so it has to be this one. A lot of people will get tricked by like answer choice C, but remember, you have to look at the number in front of x as being the slope only when you have y isolated. So once you isolate y, this would actually turn to a +1/2 instead. So that's why it's wrong. So let's go to number 4. So for number 4, we have this graph right here, and we want to know which of these equations matches that graph. Now, again, there's several things that you can do, but the most efficient is going to be the y equals mx plus b thing, typically. Or if you're like really good at mental math in your head, or just like doing calculations really fast, another really easy method is to do something like this, where you pick an easy point. Like this one's an easy point because it has a 0 in it. It would be 0, 3 as your point. And remember, points are just x, y. And then you could plug that in to see, okay, what's going to be the correct answer. So I plug in 0 for x, 3 for y, I get 3, but I need to check it for each of them. So then I see, okay, 0 for x, 3 for y, that's not going to give me -3. 0 for x, but then you see, this is why you have to check for each of them, but then I would have 0 minus 3 could get me -3. So you can't always eliminate all the answer choices easily, but I could also eliminate D just from plugging in. So that's why that's not always the most efficient method, but that's how you would do it, and then you just keep picking other points until you eliminate to get like the only correct answer. But the more efficient way of doing it would be, again, like use this formula, y equals mx plus b, where b is your y-intercept, so we know that b is going to be 3, and m is our slope. So let's just pick 2 points to figure out our slope. So I'm going to pick 2 perfect corner points right here, and I see that it's going down 1 over 1, so that means the slope has to be -1. So this has to be -1. So if I plug in all those numbers, I get y is equal to -x plus 3. Now you'll see that doesn't look exactly like what we have here. In order to fix that, I just need to move the x and the y to be on the same side. So I'm going to add x to each side, and then I'm going to have x plus y is equal to 3, and then I see it has to be answer choice A. So let's go to number 5 right over here. So for number 5, we have like this little table. People get confused with these because they aren't used to like the sideways tables as much, but this is literally like the same thing as the XY table that you're used to. It just happens to be sideways. But like the whatever x is right here matches whatever the y is on the bottom. So like this would be 2b as your x corresponds to y being 0. So assume b is a constant for the table shown above if there is a linear relationship between x and y. So linear relationship means we're working with this guy, y is equal to mx plus b. Which of the following equations represents the relationship? So again, we can just plug in our information that we have here. We don't have a y-intercept, but we have x-intercept, but that's not really helpful to plug in right away. But we can figure out what the slope is from what is the change in y over the change in x, or I'm going to show you just to like switch things up how you would use slope formula. So with slope formula, you would just make sure you always start with the values from the same point, and on top you're going to subtract your y's, and on the bottom you subtract your x's. So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm picking this point and this point. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start with -2b and 4b, because those are from the same point. And then on top, negative 2b, remember we're doing our y's on top, we're subtracting our y's, so then I have to subtract 0 is the other y. And then on bottom, I'm subtracting my x's, so I have to subtract 2b for my x value right there. And then that's going to give me negative 2b over 2b, which this cancels out and this cancels out to negative 1. So negative 1 should be my slope. So far I know that I need to have y is equal to negative x plus b. Now you'll notice that doesn't really help me much because I still need to figure out what b is. The way I could do that is just by plugging in a point. So the easiest point to probably plug in is just going to be 2b comma 0. So that means that 2b is going to be my x and 0 is going to be my y. So 0 for y. And then for x, I'm putting in 2b. You could have picked the other points too. It's just I'm obviously going to pick the easiest one to work with. And then you have to be careful here, which is why I wrote this problem this way. What you have to be careful with is this b is different than this b. They like to do this a lot on these exams to try to confuse you. They like to use what I mean by do this is they like to use constants that are used in the formula that have a different meaning than the same exact letter in the context of the problem. So this b technically means y-intercept. So let's rewrite it to mean just y-intercept. We're solving for the y-intercept. So negative 2b plus the y-intercept equals 0. So then we're going to add 2b to each side, and that's going to give us that the y-intercept is 2b. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I know what m is, I know what my y-intercept is up here, so that means that I need to have, do I have space up there? Yeah. So that means I'm going to have y is equal to negative x plus 2b. Then I just need to get my x and y on the same side. So I'm just going to add x to each side, and then it's going to be x plus y is equal to 2b. So the answer would be C for this one. So then let's go to number 6. A linear equation can be shown by y equals mx, where m is a constant, given that y is equal to 15 and x is equal to b. Thank you guys for the likes. What is the value of y when x is equal to b? So we want to find the value of y when x is equal to 3b. So they gave us a value for x and a value for y that we can plug into this equation right here. So for y, I'm going to plug in 15 into this, and I'm going to say that equals m times, and then instead of an x, I'm going to have a b, right? So if I divide by b on each side, that's going to get me the m by itself. A linear equation shown by this value right here, so they already told you that there was no y-intercept because they wrote it without the y-intercept part. It's technically a plus 0 right there. So that's going to be what my m value is right there. So instead, I'm going to write it as 15 over b times x is equal to y. And then I'm going to plug in 3b for my x value. And then that's times 3b. So then I'm going to get y is equal to 45. So then let's go to this one right here. So a line passes through the origin and has a slope of 1/8. Which of the following points lies on that line? So in this one, that problem was meant to be confusing. It's really hard to keep track of what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and the least confusing way to do it when all the letters are mixed up like this. But basically this b does not mean the same thing as y equals mx plus b. What they like to do on the test is they like to give you constants that you're used to meaning something else in the context of a formula, like you're used to with linear equations that you get y is equal to mx plus b. But what they'll do on they especially like this on the SAT is they'll say, oh, I'm going to say that x should be equal to this other variable b, so that they get confused and they think that it's the same type of b as what's supposed to represent the y-intercept, which technically it's not. So just be careful for that on exam day. How'd you get 15 from m? Because all you have to do is you plug it into from MB, all you have to do is once you plug in 15 for Y and then for X you plug in B into the formula, all you have to do is divide by B and then you have M by itself. So then you can just plug in 15 over B for M and then you just put, like, you're following this format basically. The Y equals MX. Okay, looks like you got it. Okay, so let's go to this one right here. So for this one, it's going to be easy because we don't have like letters representing a billion different things. So this is just a line, so we know we can use Y equals MX plus B for this. And it passes through the origin, so automatically you know that 0, 0 is a point on this line if it passes through the origin, and the slope, or your M, is going to be 1/8. So from all of that, I can plug in everything I need for a linear equation. I could say Y is equal to 1/8 times X, and then for B, remember it's the value of B is the Y-intercept. So if you're thinking about the origin right here, 0, 0, where it's intercepting the y-axis is at 0, 0. So that y-intercept is technically 0. So you could write that out, or just like in your head, kind of like with the other one, you can just kind of like cancel it out. But I'm going to write it out for people so that they can see. So then your whole equation would just be y is equal to 1/8 x, right? Now to know if a point lies on a certain line, all you have to do is plug in the x and y for that point to see if it works in the context of the equation. So for instance, if I want to check if A works, I'm going to plug in, because each point is x comma y, I'm going to plug in 0 for x right there, and I'm going to see, do I get 8? Well, if I plug in 0 for x here, it's going to be 1/8 times 0. That does not give me 8. So now I'm going to try it for B. If I plug in 2 for y, and then I plug in 16 for x, does this work out? So 2 is equal to 1/8 of 16 is going to be in fact 2. So yes, that does work out. So it would be answer choice B. It's actually B. So if you were thinking D, if you plug in 8 right here instead for x, you're not going to get 8 as your y. You have to make sure that when you plug in the x and y, that it gives you something that actually works. So now let's go to number 8. So line M contains the point -6, 3 and 0, 8, which is the equation for line M. So remember, line y equals mx plus b. To find out the slope, you just have to do slope formula, which means you're going to subtract the y's. So I'm going to do 8 minus 3 over the subtracted x's, 0 minus -6. You could have started with this point as well. Like you could have done -6 over here and then 3 over here and switched it up. But this is just how I'm doing it, just so you know. As long as you're starting with an x and y from the same point right here, you're good to go. So now we're going to get on top 5, and on bottom minus and minus is plus, so then that's going to be 6. 5, 6 is the slope. So, and we already know what the y-intercept is, because y-intercept is whatever the y value is when x is equal to 0, so b, the y-intercept, should be 8. So now if we plug that in to get an equation, 5, 6 is the slope, and then we're going to do plus 8 because that's the y-intercept, right? Now you'll notice it doesn't look like the answer choices, so we have to manipulate it to get it to look like one of these answer choices. So let's see. I'm going to look for like a pattern. So I see that the y and the number part, like just the regular number part, seem to be on the same side in 3 out of the 4 answer choices. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to subtract 8 from each side so I get the y and the number part on the same side. And then it looks like the whole equation was multiplied by some value to get rid of the denominator right there. So if I'm going to get rid of that denominator, I'm going to multiply by 6 so that 6 and 6 cancel out, right? But I have to multiply the whole entire equation by that. So 6 times y is 6y. 6 times -8 is going to be -48. And then 6 times 5, 6x, the 6's cancel out, so then I just have 5x. So you'll notice, that's not really what I have right here, so it's probably going to actually be answer choice D. I think I did that on purpose too. But then what we're going to do now is make it, see if we can make it look like D. So I'm going to add 48 to each side. And when oopsies, I keep doing that. No, go off. Okay. So then when I add 48 to each side to move it, I get exactly what answer choice D is. So it should be D. But if you did it the other way, wouldn't it be 6/5? You're thinking of dividing by a fraction, which means you're multiplying by the reciprocal. You're not doing that. You're just multiplying by the whole entire equation by a certain value to make it look like one of these right here. So I noticed, like, if you look at the pattern of all the different equations, like, technically this is right. This is an equation. It's just not one of the options. There's different ways we can manipulate equations and to and still have it be like the same equation, just written a little bit differently. And one of those ways is by multiplying by the whole equation by a certain number. It could be any number. Like, they could have given you an option where they decide to multiply the whole thing by 10 if they wanted to. Like, it's just so happens that I saw, oh, there's no denominator, so they probably multiplied by that value that's in the denominator, you know? So it's just kind of like playing around to see how it was manipulated. So then let's go to this one right here. For line y equals ax plus 3, a is a constant. The line contains the point BC where b is not equal to 0 and c is not equal to 0. What is the slope? So we're finding the slope of the line in terms of b and c. Okay, so the slope is this value right here, a. So essentially what this is asking us to do is isolate a, or solve for a. Now, a point was given to us, b comma c. Remember, any point is just going to be like x comma y is how we think of our points. So like b is your x value and c is your y value. So I'm going to plug that into the equation for the line. So I'm going to say c goes where y is. That's supposed to be an a. I know I kind of write them like twos, sorry. And then my x value is going to be a b, and I'm going to say plus 3. Ooh, that was a terrible 3. That's supposed to be a 3. So now I'm going to solve for a, my slope, by moving everything away from it. So I'm going to subtract 3 on each side, so then I'm going to have c minus 3 is equal to ab. Then I want to get a completely by itself, so I have to divide by b on each side, so then I'm going to get c minus 3 over b is equal to a. So, am I just losing my mind? Where is it? C, right there. Thank you so much for sharing the live and liking the live, guys. Okay, so then let's go to, what was that, number 9? So this is number 10. Okay, so for number 10, we have this equation right here, and it says the graph of which of the following equations is parallel to the graph above. So parallel means they have the same slope. So they should have the same m, basically, when you think of y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write the whole like general format of the formula right up here. And in order to make this equation look more like y equals mx plus b, I have to isolate y. So I have to subtract 3x from each side. And when I do that, I get negative 2y is equal to 6 minus 3x. Then I need to divide by negative 2. And when I do that, I get y is equal to 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3, and then negative 3x divided by negative 2 is going to be positive 3/2 x. Now remember, whatever's being multiplied or whatever's like in front of your x, however you want to think about it, that's your slope. So this means that the slope is 3/2 for this line. And if this, one of these is going to be parallel, that means it has to have the same exact slope. So if I'm writing out the equation like y equals mx plus b, I already know my slope in this case has to be 3/2. So let's see which of these fits that. Well, the only one that it could possibly be is a. That's the only one with 3/2 in front of your x value. So let's go to number 11. So it says a line with the points this and this passes through the origin, so you also know it passes through 0, 0. So there's basically 3 points you've been given. Which of the following could be the value of m? So it's a line, so we know, and again, like, this is an example of, like, be careful, variables don't always mean the same thing. So, like, in y equals mx plus b, the m that we're used to isn't this m, so I'm going to write that instead of y equals mx plus b, y is equal to the slope times whatever the x value is plus b as the y-intercept, so that I don't get confused. So I'm going to figure out what the slope is using my slope formula, which just says I'm going to subtract the y's. I'm going to start with this one, 27 minus m over, and then it's going to be m minus 3 is the slope there. And then we know the y is already going to be 0 because 0, 0, like, it's technically an x and a y-intercept, but when we think y-intercept, just think, like, what's the y when x is 0, which is just 0. So we have, this is the slope, we have that's 0, and what are we looking for? We're looking for what could be the value of m. Okay, so let's write out what we have right now. So it's going to be 27 minus m over m minus 3 times x. Okay, and then we have these values of x and y that we could potentially plug in. Which one's going to be more helpful? Let me see. I don't know if one's going to be more helpful than the other. I'm going to just do the 3 one right here. So I'm going to plug in 3 for my x value and m for my y value right there. And that's going to be 27 minus m over m minus 3 times 3. So then that's going to be m is equal to, what's 27 times 3? That's going to be 81. So it's going to be 81 minus 3m over m minus 3. Then you can just multiply each side by m minus 3. And then it's going to cancel out on this side. I'm running out of space. So then it's going to be m squared minus 3m is equal to 81 minus 3m. So then these would cancel out. When you just add 3, you could have added this 3m or added that 3m, doesn't matter. It cancels out. And then you have just m squared is equal to 81. Well, what number squared is equal to 81? That would have to be 9b right there. Someone asked, what quiz PDF are you using? If you're asking about the app, this is an app that just came with, like, my Samsung tablet. I think it's called, like, NoteShelf. If you're asking about the actual, like, PDF document, sorry, my dad just texted me. If you're asking about the actual PDF document, then that's the one that's, it's from my book. It's on my website if you're interested in getting it. I forget if this is one of the free chapters or not. I release some chapters for free and some of them are, like, paid. But if you go to my website, which is in my profile, it'll, like, take you to my TPT thing, which has the free downloads and the paid ones. And then, is there pre-calc on the SAT? Yes, and actually, they increased the amount of geometry and trigonometry. Like, not by a crazy amount, but just know that that's one of, like, the changes. So then let's go to this one right here. The point m, n lies on the line, y is equal to x plus c, where c is a constant. The point with these coordinates lies on the line with the equation there. So basically this point lies on this line, this point lies on this line. Assume m is not equal to 0. What is the value of n over m? So we got to solve for what n over m is. Okay. So remember, points are just x comma y, so if mn is a point in this line, I could just plug in for x, m, and for y, n. So that's what I'm going to do in the first scenario. So n is equal to m plus c, and then in the second scenario, this is my x, 3m is my x, and 4n is my y, so I'm going to plug that in to the second equation. So I'm going to say 4n has to equal 3 times 3m for my x value plus c. And then I'm going to multiply the 3 times 3m, and I get 4n is equal to 9m plus c. Let me actually just erase that so it's not like super messy and annoying. There we go. Okay, so now what I can do is, let me see what's the easiest way to go about this. I could do like substituting in m plus c over here. Maybe, wait, would that be the easiest way to go about it? I feel like that's not. Oh, oh my god. I cannot believe myself. Okay. I could just do elimination, and then I get rid of the c, which is my issue. I was trying to do substitution, and then I was like, what do I do with the c? Duh, there's another way to do systems of equations. You just subtract elimination. Sometimes my brain is just crazy. So then I have, if I'm eliminating, because this is a systems of equations, so I'm eliminating by subtracting, that gets rid of the c, and then I have negative 8m is equal to negative 3n, so then in order to get n over m, I'm going to divide by m on each side, so then I could think of it as I have this, basically, if I'm doing it step by step, dividing by m on each side gets me this, and then I just have to divide by negative 3 to get n over m. Sorry about that, I had like a spacey out moment. So then I get 8/3 as my answer here, A. So for number 13, it's going to say line Z contains points in quadrant 1, 3, and 4, but does not contain points in quadrant 2. Which of the following must be true? Okay. So it contains points in, let me draw out the quadrants for everybody. So that's quadrant 1, that's quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, like when you're thinking the XY plane thing. And whoops, this is quadrant 4. So line Z contains points, so it has points in this quadrant, it has points in this quadrant, and it has points in this quadrant, but it does not have points in that quadrant. So then which of the following must be true? Let's see. So that's going to be the slope is equal to 0. That doesn't necessarily have to be true because you could have something like this. That's not going to have a slope of 0. Let me undo that. So it can't be A. And then we have the slope of line Z is undefined. So remember, undefined slope would be the one that's like this, like straight up and down. That doesn't necessarily have to, actually that I don't even think can be true, because if it's going straight up and down, if it was like right here, it's going to be in these two, but then not in that one. And then if it's right here, it's going to be like in a quadrant it's not supposed to be in. And like there's no way for it to be like in all 3 of the quadrants it's supposed to be in, basically. And be an undefined. Why is it not deleting? There we go. Okay. So then now we have the slope of line Z is positive. So this could be line Z, this could be line Z. That looks like, yeah. These are all potential options that are going through all 3 of these quadrants. It could be positive. And then let me undo. There we go. So that's a contender. It's probably that one. And then the slope of line Z is negative. So for a slope to be negative, it goes like this. Like from left to right, it goes down. So let's start like playing around with that to see if like there's a way to get it in all 3 quadrants it's supposed to. Well, it's only in these 2. If you do it like that, only it's in a quadrant it's not supposed to be to. If you do it like that, if you like kept on trying, it's basically either gonna go into one of the quadrants it's not supposed to be in, or it's only gonna be in like a certain amount of the quadrants that it's supposed to be in, and not all 3 of the quadrants. So it can't be D, it's gonna just be C. Thank you guys for liking the live. So then let's go to number 14 now. Hold on, let me get a sip of water really quick. Okay. Oh, thank you for the roses, guys. I never get roses. Okay, so let's go. Hold on, I'm trying to erase this so it's not super messy and annoying. Okay, there we go. So now let's go to number 14. So for number 14, it's asking what is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept of the line for the equation above. So basically they want to know what x is for the x-intercept. So remember x-intercept, if you think about it like a point, it's like this, x-intercept comma 0 for the y, like the x value when y is 0. So all we need to do is plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So that's what we'll do. If I plug in 0 for y right here, negative 2/5 times 0 is just 0, so then I'm just going to be left with 4/3 x is equal to 1. Now I just have to get x by itself, so I have to divide by 4/3. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, so it's the same thing as multiplying by 3/4. So 1 times 3/4 is just going to be 3/4. So it's just x is equal to 3/4. Remember, you also have the option on the exam to write it as a decimal, so this could be 0.75. Just as a reminder for people, the digital SAT is changing now, so you would still write it like exactly like this, but for longer decimal problems, if they are allowing negative values now, so like let's say that you had like negative, I don't know, 0.3888, like repeating, they're allowing now, if it's a negative, it can go up to 6 characters, not 6 digits, 6 characters. If it's negative. If it's positive, it can be 5 characters. So basically you just have to like round it off or cut it off once you get to 6 characters or 5 characters on the exam. And like the negative value and the little decimal count as a character. So like you would have to stop it right there. You could do it like that, or you could round up, because if the next number was an 8, you could round it up so that that value was a 9. And it could be like this. So then that's, well, actually, hold on. That would be, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Yeah. That would be 6 characters. I want to keep saying digits, characters. So, just like a quick little update. So don't be concerned if you're getting like negative numbers or something, because that's allowed now. That's one of the changes. So let's go to number 15. So for number 15, it says line S has an x-intercept of negative 30. Line S is also perpendicular to the line with this equation, so it's perpendicular, okay, which means it has a negative reciprocal slope to this line. The point 15 comma negative b is on line S. What is the value of b? Okay, so I'm basically going to figure out what is the equation for line S. Then I'm going to plug in this point to figure out what b is. And I might need to plug in like also the x-intercept thing. The x-intercept, think of it like a point, like negative 30 is the x value, and x-intercept means like the y is 0. So like we also have that point. So remember they said that it's perpendicular to this line right here. If I subtract 1 from each side, I get y by itself. So then I have y is equal to all of this. And remember, the number in front of your x is going to be your slope. So the slope of this line is 2/3. So if I want line S, the perpendicular line, it's going to be the negative reciprocal slope. So it's going to be y is equal to negative 3/2. That's the negative flip version of that, times x. Plus, I'm going to put whatever the y-intercept is, because I don't want to get confused with like this b meaning something different. So plus whatever the y-intercept is. So this is line S. I know that I have these 2 points on line S. So I'm going to start by plugging in negative 30 for my x and 0 for my y, so I can solve for the y-intercept, then have a complete equation that I can then plug this point into. So I'm going to put negative 30 for my x. Oops. And then for my y is going to be 0. So now all I have to do is just solve for what the y-intercept is. I can cross cancel here. I could say that 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into negative 30, negative 15 times. So then I have just negative 3 times negative 15, which is going to be positive 45. So I have 0 is equal to 45 plus the y-intercept. So then I just have to subtract 45 from each side. So I get negative 45 is equal to my y-intercept. So now I can just plug this in for the y-intercept, and I have the complete equation. Y is equal to negative 3/2 x plus negative 45, which is technically the same thing as just like minus 45, so I'm not even going to put that plus there, because adding a negative is the same as subtracting. So this is my equation that now I'm going to plug in this for x and this for y, and then solve for what b is. So that's what I'm going to do. So y is equal to negative 3 halves times, for x I'm going to put 15. And then, oh, sorry, I forgot to put the b in. Whoops. So negative b is my y value in this equation. So I'm putting in negative b for y. Then I have 3 halves times whatever the x is, which is going to be 15. And then I have minus 45. So now all I have to do is solve this for b. So I'm going to say negative b is equal to this, well, that actually doesn't cancel out. So negative 3 times 15 is going to be negative 45, and that's over 2, and then we have that minus 45. Now remember, if you're subtracting with fractions, you have to make sure they have a common denominator. So 45 is the same thing as 45 over 1. If we multiply the bottom and top by 2, we can get a fraction that's equivalent with that common denominator. So then I'm going to get 2 on bottom and 90 on top. So then I'm going to get negative b is equal to, that's going to be negative 135 over 2. Then you're going to divide by the negative to get b by itself. So it's going to be b is equal to 135, oh, that looks like a 7, 135 over 2, which as a decimal, what's that going to be? Let me do it in my calculator. 135 divided by 2 is 67.5 as a decimal. So 67.5. Okay, so then let's go to number 16. So a line passes through this point and crosses the x-axis at this point. So they've given you 2 points. The line crosses the y-axis at this point, so they also give you a y-intercept because where it crosses the y-axis, that's the y-intercept. What is the value of k? So basically we're finding the y-intercept, or k, however you want to think about it. So remember, for a line, we have to follow the format of y is equal to mx plus b. So we have 2 points, so we can easily figure out the slope using the slope formula. So I'm going to do the y subtracted on top, so 5 minus 0, over the x's subtracted on top, 2 minus 3. So that's going to be 5 over negative 1, which is just negative 5. So my slope is negative 5. So y is equal to negative 5 times x plus, and remember, y-intercept is just what the y value is when x is 0, so plus k. And then I'm trying to solve for what k is, so all I have to do is plug in either one of these points. I could do the 2, 5 or the 3, 0 to plug those in for x and y. I just have to pick one of them, doesn't matter which one, and then I just solve for k. So I'm going to pick the 3, 0 one. So I'm going to say my 0 is y, or my y is 0, and then I'm going to say that my x is 3, and then I just have to copy over the plus k. I don't like how that equal sign looks. And then now I say, okay, well, I have 0 is equal to negative 5 times 3 is negative 15 plus k. Then I have to add 15 each side to get k by itself. So then I get k is equal to 15 as my answer. Is there another problem on this? Yeah. Okay, so then number 17, what is the slope of the line graphed over here above? And then there's a bonus question, what's the y-intercept? So the slope, remember, if you're looking at a graph, just look for 2 perfect corner points. So like the first ones I see right here are right here and right here, like perfect corner points. They're on a perfect corner of the square. Like they're not like this where it's not on a perfect corner or something. So 2 perfect corner points, and then you see, okay, how do I get from the left point to the right point? Well, I go up by 2, and then I go to the right by 5. So my slope is going to be 2 over 5 because it's a change in y over the change in x. And now the bonus question, what is the y-intercept? Well, I see where does it intercept the y-axis, because that's going to be y-intercept, is right here. And that's at negative 2. So y-intercept is equal to negative 2. Be careful on the exam, because sometimes what they like to do is like, they might say that this is like 10 or something, and each of these squares is supposed to be 2. That's one of the ways that they trick you on the exam, so just be careful. In this case, each of the squares does represent 1, but Just be careful that you're paying attention to the scale on exam problems.